Hello there, this is Kevin from the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Team at the Children's Resource Center in Bowling Green, Ohio. And I'm bringing to you another one of our parent chat topics, learning about little personalities, the basics of temperament. So I would ask you to think about temperament for a moment and what you know about it. And I like to describe it as those individual differences that we all share that kind of make us who we are as a person, makes up our personal traits or characteristics or attributes, just our natural style and approach to the world. It affects us in different ways. Children have individual traits that are very unique to them, just as you do as an adult. And when our traits or styles do not match up with the children we're caring for, there can be more challenges. People interact with each other based on how they see each other's traits at times, and we can't change or choose our basic temperament. It really is part of who we are, and we can adapt though with time and experience. Temperament can vary greatly from child to child. And if you've had more than one child, you might have recognized how these two children interact with the world very differently. You can also notice this if you think about any relationship that you're in your life and how the other person might be more energetic or more slow, might be more emotional or less emotional, or have more energy or less energy, or be more distracted or less distracted. So there are many different combinations of traits that can make up who we are. And so very few people are the exact same. Our individual traits can help us or really hinder us based on the situation. So when we're being asked, or children are being asked to hurry up or get something done, and they're more of a slow, cautious, or slow to warm child, it might take them longer to finish that activity up. And if we intervene in a very rushed way, it might come across as inconsiderate and not caring. And that's not really what we're trying to tell them. We're just trying to convey how important it is that we get where we need to be next. But that's an example of where you might run into some challenges based on temperament. We have to adapt children's temperament because they cannot adapt to ours. And generally, in the literature out there, there are 9 parts of temperament. The first one is activity level. Is your kiddo go, go, go? Or is your kiddo like all sitting still all the time and sedentary, very quiet, shy, slower in general? And as we talk through these, keep in mind that most children fall somewhere in between. So areas where you might think about addressing some challenges with activity level is if your child is more energetic or less energetic than you overall. There may be times when you have to rush them, and you might instead plan in advance where you foresee those challenges happening. For example, when you're trying to get out the door or you're trying to move to another room, that might be an opportunity to plan in some preparation, some warning time to get them a little more ready to go. They might need a little more than other kiddos. Another area to think about is biological rhythms and regularity. So think about, is your kiddo that you have in mind, are they predictable in their patterns, in their regularity? Are they hungry at the same times, sleepy at the same times, go to the bathroom at the same times? Or does it seem to be very sporadic? Because you might have to, again, plan and prepare around that. If you know that your kiddo is going to have a biological need of some kind at a certain time, prepare so that you're ready to help them in achieving that, whether it's food or a bathroom break or whatever, and vice versa. If your child's more irregular, you might have to carry extra supplies with you for potential accidents or other things to happen that you can be prepared for. When it comes to sensitivity, you might think of how sounds, taste, touch, temperature, and other preferences might impact your kiddo. And so, if your kiddo is bothered by certain senses, experiences with sensitivity in certain areas, then you may want to remove certain stimuli or certain objects from the room. Or if they really thrive off of certain sensory experiences, you may want to add them into their daily routine or activities. And you might also think of textures in there as well, and that can easily carry over into food and their experience with food as they grow older. And also sleep, we might think, do they like a quiet sleeping environment, or do they prefer, or do they not really mind a noisy or cluttered sleeping environment? Another area to think about is intensity of reaction. With this, you might think about, is your kiddo having really strong emotions or reactions, or are they very minimal and absent almost? This might be an opportunity to talk about feelings and emotions. Ask them how they're feeling. Show them an emotion chart. If they can't use the words or the language, or if they don't have language yet, they can point at a feeling face. If they're having really intense emotions, you might also need to prepare yourself for that reaction. If it's going to possibly work you up or set you off, you might have to prepare to take 3 deep breaths. You might have to prepare to ask the other adult, if you have someone to support you in that, to help you in this challenging time, a grandparent, a co-teacher, a co-parent. Another area to think about is adaptability. Is your kiddo quick to adapt or hesitant with changes? This might be where preparing them ahead of time for changes can really help them be more successful. And also, if your kid is really quick, in those kind of situations, you might have to be more mindful of where they are, because they might be engaged in a little more risky behavior sometimes. With the next one, approach and withdrawal, it's kind of similar, but we're looking at their reaction. They're more of their internal reaction versus their external reaction. And so, do they seem to be willing to approach newness, or maybe a new person or a new toy, comfortably? Or do they withdraw away from changes, maybe? Do they seem to avoid new environments, new people? And this might be an opportunity for you to introduce those new things ahead of time to help your kiddo feel more comfortable when they have to be in that environment or with that person. You might also think about persistence, and how how much does your kiddo keep trying? Or do they get discouraged quickly or easily frustrated? If you know that they get discouraged quickly, you might need to make yourself or someone else available to help them move on to a new task, or have multiple things ready to go for them so that they can move on to something else. Or you might be there to help support them in finishing the activity, if you think that they're able to do that, if they're not too frustrated. We don't want to force them into finishing a task, because you'll need to pick your battles. As you probably well know, there may be times when you might decide to not deal with something. And that is okay. Safety first, right? And as long as your kiddo is not in any immediate danger, then you as a parent have a right to make that choice. You might also think about distractibility. How is your kiddo handling concentration, attention, sights, or sounds? Do they seem to be easily distracted, like more than most kids their age? Or do they really hold attention to something? Do they really get deep into something and almost lose awareness of their surroundings? Do they seem to be really bothered by other sounds and sights, things that are visible? That might be something to consider when you're trying to get them to do a task. You might want to take away other stimuli and allow, and maybe if it's stimuli that, if they're distractions that are preventing them from completing the task, maybe you could remove them. And if they're always going to be there in the future, then plan ways to integrate them slowly. Introduce those sounds or activities that are distracting in a slower way so that they're not having to cope with it all at once. And the last one there is mood. And you would think about whether your kiddo is generally cheerful or tend to be more serious. And there you might think about just times when maybe your wires might get crossed and you might be trying to get your kiddo to take something seriously, but maybe they're just generally cheerful. And so you might take that as disrespectful, and vice versa. If you're maybe having a good day overall and your kiddo seems to be more on the serious end, you might be concerned that maybe there's something wrong with them. When in reality, this could possibly just be their overall temperament. So, some tips from the literature that I gathered was to get to know your child's individual temperament. What makes them special? Are they easy or flexible, active or feisty, or slow to warm and cautious? Most children are somewhere in the middle of those three categories, or mostly fit in with one of those. Learn about your own temperament and how it fits in with your kiddos and where it differs. Because as we just talked about, that could be the source of some challenging times. Does your child need more structure or less structure? More stimulation or less stimulation? Again, thinking about that environment and about your schedule. Do you need to slowly introduce new things? Or is it okay to allow them to dive right in? Consider ways you might adjust things to fit their temperament, such as the amount of preparation you might have to do, your routine adjustments if needed, the schedule in the household or classroom, and the speed with which maybe you're going through those activities. How long can they handle an activity? What's their duration of focus and attention and concentration? You might think about spending one-on-one time with them, if even just a few minutes a day, to get to know their likes and dislikes. Be a child's champion. The goal isn't to change a child's temperament, but to help him or her make the most of their unique temperament. This information I gathered from several resources, including the Center and Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning at Vanderbilt, and they have a great PDF. I believe it's called Tip 23, and I am showing a link on the screen here, as well as the Center for Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation has a temperament tool, and the Early Consultation Childhood team in Connecticut had a great resource for teachers, and Penn State University Extension Office has a great article on understanding temperament and how it's a parenting secret. The University of Michigan had some great information on the 9 traits of temperament, and the 0 to 3 website is probably one of the most thorough resources for you to explore. If you'd like to know more about this topic, I suggest that you visit their website at 0to3.org. I show a visual on my screen here, if you can see it, of the 0 to 3 website temperament page, the temperament continuum from the Center for Social Emotional Foundations for Early Learning, and that shows the 9 areas, and it also gives descriptions of whether your kiddo is on one end of the spectrum of temperament or the other end, or somewhere in between. And then there's a picture of the Parenting Secret article from the Penn State University Extension Office. So Thank you again for joining me. Please stay tuned for more videos. And if you're in Northwest Ohio, feel free to reach out to us for consultation services. Thank you.